right, so I am pleased to have someone who I've been looking forward to conversating with for quite some time, especially ever since I stumbled across his channel and his work. This is Truth is Stranger Than Fiction. And he has a great YouTube channel. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know it. If you don't, links will be down in the description. So what's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for setting this up, Carlos. I know we've been trying to do this for months now.
Yeah.
But just kept getting disconnected. So I'm glad we're finally making it happen.
Yeah, I think I'm not one to want to push, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want to be that guy who's like constantly trying to be overbearing when it comes to stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? I want to make sure that I give people their space.
Yeah, no, that's cool. No, I've liking your stuff for a long time. And, you know, you're definitely one of those guys who are just kind of, you know, very down to earth and real, and, you know, not trying to. I really appreciate it when people can just be, you know, regular people, and do good research, and not, you know, not get sucked up into the whole, you know, trying to be a personality thing.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that.
Definitely somebody. I like the fact that you're just kind of a solid brother in the Lord, and looking into the flat Earth, but also representing, you know, Jesus and being what it's all about, and looking through all the conspiracy stuff. You know, I've heard you talk about how, you know, yeah, the flat Earth really, like in your last video, you're talking about how the flat Earth really ties all these conspiracies together, but then also, you know, also kind of shows you, yeah, that there's certain ones that are just obviously complete, you know, you just got to kind of toss them out.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're willing to do that and be like, okay, well, now that we know what we know, you know, then obviously, you know, we have to kind of adjust accordingly. But what's amazing to me is how much, you know, there's very little that you actually have to just throw out altogether. A lot of it's just more like, okay, we're understanding this in a new light, right? But
exactly.
Kind of, you know, especially with the whole space stuff, you know, and all the symbolism and the occult connections. I mean, you could spend all your time just looking into that stuff. But, you know, I like that you kind of get how it all connects.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with guys like you and other individuals who definitely are not just sticking to, hey, look, the curvature's here, or, you know, how the sun tracks, but looking into the deeper rooted information that a lot of people seem to overlook, or maybe they stay away from because they don't fully understand it and they don't know how to explain it. So, yeah, I mean, that has a lot to do with it. But I want to start from the beginning with you. I want to start, what got you into this?
Oh, into the flat Earth stuff?
Yeah.
It was the same entry point that I imagine a lot of people had. I know Rob Skiba had talked about it, how he heard Mark Sargent on Canary Cry Radio, their podcast, and that was where I'd never heard of. I wasn't, to be honest, I wasn't even like watching stuff on YouTube at all. At that time, I would just kind of, you know, I'd come into all the conspiracy stuff back in like 2010, learning about 9/11. So yeah, I'd been kind of through the whole rabbit hole, the Genesis 6 stuff, and so right around that time was like when I had gone to the, you know, Does Face Like the Sun and Canary Cry and all that. I had started kind of following him when he just had a blog, like before he even came out with
a channel.
Well, before he came out with his documentary.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Fallen Angels in the New World Order. The Age of Deceit. That's kind of what kicked off all this stuff. And then shortly after that, I started doing the podcast, and I listened to that for years. And before, I was just kind of a big podcast junkie. You know, I was watching documentaries and stuff on YouTube at the beginning, but after a while, I kind of got away from that to where I was, it wasn't just like absorbing ridiculous amounts of information. But then, so over the years, I'd kind of, you kind of start to kind of add pieces to the puzzle, and you're learning about, all the different false flags and what Freemasonry is all about, and all the, all the typical stuff.
Yep.
And then, so a couple years before learning about flat Earth, I had, because like, of course, as soon as you get into conspiracy, even people not into conspiracy for the whole moon landing hoax idea, but I'd heard about that, and then when I finally, I think it was again on Canary Cry, I heard about Bart Sebrell, and I went and watched the whole funny thing happen on the way to the moon.
Yep. And
so, like in a few hours, it was like, okay, so the moon landing was fake. Like, I'd heard about that for years, and then it was just when I finally bothered to look, it was like, oh wow, it's ridiculously fake. Like, I couldn't believe it. So that was kind of an easy realization, but I had no idea like why they would fake it. It was just, I don't know why, but obviously they did. And when you just look at the footage with an open mind, it's like, there's no way. This is a joke. So that was just kind of where I'd been. And then hearing Mark Sargent talk on the podcast, it was like, it was interesting because he talked about the moon hoax, and I was already there. And, I thought it was interesting, but I was like, I think at first I was like, because I've listened to a lot of weird stuff, we all kind of do, right? Yeah. You're always kind of trying to go like, well, maybe there's sort of a nugget of truth into what they're finding, especially when you're listening to secular researchers, Yeah. Maybe they're looking into Bigfoot, or they're looking into UFOs or whatever, but they don't understand the spiritual, aspect behind it all. So they might have some really good little tidbits in their research, but they don't fully understand what they've even come across, right? So you're always kind of trying to like look for those nuggets. So that was kind of what I was going for when I was just listening to Sargent. Like, at first I was like, well, maybe there's something to this in terms of like this is like this, especially when I started looking at like the depictions of like ancient Hebrew cosmology, with the dome and the flat Earth. Like I thought like, well, maybe there's a certain degree of reality. I wrote a blog post about it, I think shortly after. Excuse me. Where it was like, well, maybe this is sort of like a depiction of the spiritual realm or something, or in the way like the firmament is like the veil between our, existence and the spiritual, like maybe there's something to this, but obviously the world isn't, really flat. I mean, come on. Yeah. That's kind of where I was for like a month. And then I was thinking about it for like a day or two. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to, this is stupid. I'm just going to get on here and see how quickly I can debunk this. And I came across the little, the flight from Chile to Australia. Yeah. And it was like, yep, there you go. That was easy. 10 minutes. Bye. Done. And moved on. But I was still thinking about it. Like, it was still kind of percolating, for like a month or so. And then I popped on YouTube and saw, like, Skiba was doing he had just done an interview, like a conversation with Josh Peck, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of done some stuff together. And they were talking about flat Earth. And so I was like, well, this is interesting, because I've been following Josh Peck and the stuff on higher dimensions and all that. And I was honestly really expecting them to get into that aspect of it, the whole hyperdimensional side of it, because I was starting to really want, because that was kind of the angle I've been thinking about. And that's when I started hearing Skiba talking about all the stuff he'd come across with like the lighthouses and so that's when I really started seeing like how, like, no, seriously, the curvature thing, this is weird, like, yeah, this is true. Like, if we can see way farther, like what's up with that? Like, how do you, I'm the kind of person that's like, once I get one of those weird anomaly pieces of information, it's like, you can't just like ignore it. You gotta, the whole idea of like, that, it's just the atmosphere refracting the light around the, it's just like, that's ridiculous. Yep. So it was like once I got to that level where I got really kind of saw the curvature problem, it was like, yeah, I was really tumbling down. Like, well, maybe it really is thinking flat, And then it was like, boom, and then you're tumbling, and then just like with the moon landing, you're looking at all the NASA stuff, the ISS. You're just like, it all falls apart. And then the globe pictures, and then that power limit, all that stuff. So it was just kind of a crazy, like, wow. But then as soon as I started to kind of realize, like, dude, this might really somehow actually be like that like true on that level. Like it's really literally flat. It really is literally is an enclosure over us. Then I started to like instantly different things that I kind of listened to over the years involving all these weird, weird conspiracy things, like whether it's Planet X, uh, or just the whole Genesis 6 thing. It was like with the Watchers falling, coming to Earth and having the Nephilim and all that, which is like, if these channels and teachers and conferences and speakers have been talking about years and years and years, the Nephilim, the whole Nephilim thing is just huge,
Yeah.
It still is kind of, but it was like, this doesn't make sense. Outer space really doesn't have doesn't fit. It fits, outer space only fits into it when you're talking about the ancient aliens, right? So, I'd already come through the whole thing where, listening to guys like L.A. Marzulli, listening to guys like Chris White, who, he did this huge ancient aliens debunked. Are you familiar with Chris White?
Yeah, I've seen his work.
Yeah, man. That stuff's been seen like millions of times. So it's like you've got all these people who are already there in terms of like they understand that the whole UFO alien deception is demonic, that it's dimensional. They're extra dimensional beings. They're not extraterrestrial. Like they're already there,
Yep.
So it's like I kind of figured that like as soon as it started to like gain traction and that like there's people out there doing experiments and testing for curvature and it's like it's coming up again and again and it's like it's not reflecting what the globe should dictate. I was like, all these guys, they're gonna eventually be like, dude, this totally fits. It makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Why they would come up with the whole UFO? Why you need space in order to have space aliens? In order to come up with a whole backstory for like where these beings are coming from, rather than because if they're spirits from the spiritual dimension, then it's like people already have a paradigm for that, and it's not, they're not going to be as favorable because there still is, despite all the programming and all the social engineering and trying to eradicate, the Bible and biblical worldview from our culture. There's still a lot of people that, believe in things like angels and demons or think it's a possibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like Satan had to rebrand his whole, his whole hierarchy. And when you understand it all from the spiritual, this is what's crazy, Carlos. It's like, dude, the first people that were talking about aliens and alien beings and alien contact were the occultists, were the theosophists and the people that were channeling beings who were like, I'm from Pleiades, I'm from Alpha Centauri, I'm from, right?
Yeah.
Doing what occultists have always done, which is contacting the spiritual. It's crazy because you see how, once you kind of step back and if you understand how that whole cult New Age agenda has progressed, it's like, this is where all the idea of space and, all the science fiction and and then all the NASA stuff. Both on the American side, the German side with the Nazis, and on the Russian side, there's all this occult stuff like going on at the inception of all the space programs. So like, what's up with that? And I'd always kind of wondered about that. Like, why? Because I knew about Jack Parsons and JPL, and Jack Parsons was like a devotee of Aleister Crowley and all that. So it's like, why would somebody who's like learning this dark Crowley magic and doing rituals in the desert with the founder of Scientology and all this weird stuff, this dark stuff. Why suddenly is he, you know, why then turn around and get into rocketry? What do rockets have to do with the spiritual realm? I never understood like that. Why would you go that direction? But now, finally, it's like, oh, okay, there is obviously a big connection. And the same thing with like NASA and all um, their mission logos and the names of all their, it's just like from top to bottom, it's all this occult mythology and occult symbolism. It's ridiculous. So obviously, there's a spiritual connection, but it's like if these people, these Illuminati, guys and whatever factions you're talking about, if they already understand that this is the same spiritual belief system, Babylonian belief system that goes thousands of years back, and they're trying to trace their lineage to Nephilim bloodlines and whatever else. Why would they actually be just concentrating on trying to get human beings to some other rock in the solar system? If they already understand that this is a dimensional, a spiritual struggle, right? These entities they know that they're not aliens, like living on a planet somewhere and trying to fly in a spaceship, right?
Right.
They know that they're dealing with spiritual beings. So it makes sense. So it's like, why, because like you said, some of the stuff that eventually you just kind of got to realize is all fluff. It's like the whole secret space program idea, the stuff that's like on Coast to Coast and Richard Norrie and all the stuff that's been pushed out and it's echoed by Hollywood, right? You got Independence Day movies and all these things about, they're hiding flying saucers and all this stuff. You see that, like, wait, the whole space thing is a way of spinning it all, when it's been a spiritual issue and a spiritual struggle all along, right? But without space, without the whole Copernican universe, that story doesn't even get off the ground. There is no UFO alien deception without space. And it's like, to some people, it's like the second they're presented with the whole flat Earth idea, it's like clicks and they get it and it's like obvious, right?
Yeah.
But then what amazes me is that there's all these other guys that get that the UFO deception is spiritual deception, but they don't. It's like they hit that barrier and they can't think that like space and the globe and all that could be all just made up or as a part of and evolution ties into it, transhumanism ties into it.
Yeah.
It's all one. They're all connected, and even all the quantum science. There's just like so many. There's so many things. There's so many rabbit holes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a crazy rant, but
no, that was awesome because
you're one of those guys that you're just like, dude, it's obvious.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. I don't know why it isn't obvious to a lot more people. It's like it's weird how even amongst people that are in the truth movement are used to conspiracy and being mocked and stuff. There's a certain level of like, no, I don't want to cross that line. Like there's like acceptable crazy, and then there's like, no, that's just off your rocker crazy, and you're an idiot, and you're, like they just won't. They literally hit the psychological barrier, where it's just and this is what gets me, dude, because they're like that, all these people that like, well, flat Earth is ridiculous, and that's just, they won't even look at the evidence, they won't even look at the real issues, but then they'll turn around and Hollow Earth, like the Hollow Earth is, well, that's interesting, or
yeah,
or Planet X, or all these things where you're just like, are you kidding me? And it's weird because I feel like the flat Earth thing is kind of like brought out this, exposed a lot of this weird mentality that I think I didn't really realize existed when it comes to so many things that are like, are you talking about this because you're really serious about the truth, or because certain things are just nice to talk about sort of hypothetically, but, we can never really, we can just talk about it all day long for months on end, for years on end at conferences and write books, but, you know, it can never really confirm whether there's like giant caverns under the earth filled with weird monsters and stuff. It's all hypothetical. With the flat earth, you can go out and test things, know? And so it's totally different in the sense that, it brings it back to just the realm of sort of the everyday, like, what is your reality? It's not just like this quasi science fiction kind of, you know what I'm talking about? You still there?
No, yeah, most definitely.
Okay. So I think that's the weirdest that it kind of caught a lot of these speakers and authors and stuff off guard because, it's like they kind of got into the comfy rhythm of like, I'm going to come out with another Watchers DVD. I'm going to come out with another book on, the pyramids on Mars. I'm going to come out with another whatever.
Yep.
But it's all just like, and it'd be interesting material, but it's like at the end, it's like, what does this really have to do with the day-to-day? That's what's crazy is that like once I started it, because I was never really into NASA, I was never really into space stuff.
Yeah, just movies.
But once you start looking into this, it's like suddenly you're paying attention to all the NASA propaganda that's coming out like every day, and you're like, this is ridiculous. It's all fake. So I mean, I don't know if that was what was your
Go ahead.
I don't know. No, because I don't want to do all the talking. But what was some of the things that kind of just stuck out to you the most once you started kind of looking at the world and looking at all the other conspiracy stuff, through the cosmology angle?
Well, yeah, definitely. Rob Skew had a lot to do with it, because I think the first thing that has to happen is when you come across someone who you already respect their research in some form or fashion. And so when I heard him talking about it, I was like everybody else, roll your eyes back. But, I have enough respect for the guy that I'm going to hear what he has to say, because it'll give me something to do or listen to pass the time. But when they start talking about, like you said, seeing lighthouses and seeing that, you really, it's almost like it hits you, as a person, as a human being, and realize, holy cow, I've never experienced curvature. Like, how come they always say, like, because in your mind, you kind of think that it's just something that eventually it just happens, right? It just happens. Like, you'll be upside down eventually. And you realize that never has happened. So when you start doing the research, you start looking into the distances and stuff like that. It's like, wait, it's like there is no curvature. Like, I guess the biggest thing once I had that understanding was, NASA themselves admitting that all their photos are CGI. It's like, so we don't have an actual photo, like, and that ties back into the whole satellite thing that I have in my previous video, which is if they had a picture of the Earth and they say they have thousands of satellites, like you wouldn't be able to see the Earth because there'd be so many satellites in the way and space debris and all. And I don't think people think about those things. Those are just simple little things that we have to consider. The ISS footage when they show the ISS,
I have
supposedly
this, old Time magazine from like 1960, mid 60s, like before Apollo, right? And it was when it was like the highest photos of Earth taken from space, right? So it was like before Gemini, before they'd done any spacewalks, quote unquote. And in it, they have I should like do a video on it. They have these little like drawings of like what space junk is gonna, like they were already talking about like what a problem this is gonna be,
Yep.
And that there's hardly any satellites at the time, but it was like the same thing we've seen now, animated. And it's just like, wait a minute, when you really stop and you start looking at all this is like in the 50s and 60s, it was like we're gonna have a moon base on Mars and people are gonna be traveling to space just like they get on a jumbo jet and it's just gonna be they've been saying this about SpaceX and all this stuff too, and it's like, oh, it keeps getting delayed. And you're just like, wait a minute. And then yeah, the photos of the Earth thing, man, it was like I couldn't believe that because it's like honestly, it should be like it's like if somebody told you to Google photos of London, and you're like, there should be like millions and millions of more photos of London than you could ever look at. Right?
Exactly.
That's how it should be with the Earth, right? After 50 years, there should be so many pictures that it's like we shouldn't be having this conversation because there should be so many thousands upon thousands of photographs from every angle, from every type of camera, every we're talking decades where it's like if you can put a man on the moon and you can put satellites, it's taking a picture is like child's play compared to all the other things that they say that they're doing with these satellites.
Yep.
So we should have so many pictures that you and I should not be sitting here talking about.
No, this shouldn't. Right? We should never even have met.
We should be buried under a mountain of photographic evidence, just like like it'd be like me claiming that there's no such place as the city of London, because it's like, like, dude, you think all these photos are fake, but it's amazing because people still just make up excuse after excuse, even people that are like. Yeah, we can. The government they they covered up 9/11. They lie about all these things. Yeah, NASA. This is what I don't get. There's people that are like they know all about what was behind the Nazis' rise to power and all the occultism going on there. They know all about Project Paperclip. They know all about what the Freemasons are about. That they're a satanic organization, and then they're like. Oh, but and yeah, NASA, they lie about certain things, but they couldn't. The whole thing couldn't be a lie.
It's way too big, right?
Do you believe that the Nazis were creating anti-gravity technology and the Nazi bell? People like the time travel stuff. It goes on, and people are like, yeah, that's interesting. But then all those Nazi the occult science. Breakthroughs that are all of these secret projects, they somehow just turned into like, oh yeah, we went and played golf on the moon and we had a space shuttle. By the way, dude, did you know, and it's all like legit. And did you know that Russia had a space shuttle program like at the same time that almost got off the ground and then just kind of mysteriously, I haven't heard anyone talk about this, but I found out about it not that long ago. It was almost the exact same design. It was the same thing. They had Russian space shuttles. They looked the same, and they built like a bunch of them. And now there's still some that are sitting in this abandoned warehouse. You should look it up, dude. It's amazing.
I didn't know. I mean, I knew that we all know that they have a so-called space program, but not that they had a shuttle.
No, yeah, no. It looked almost identical, and it could like even piggyback on the top of the jumbo jet and everything. It's amazing. And then you had because when the Challenger thing happened, right, that was their way to pull the plug on the shuttle because it was not the direction. I think it was just too. I mean, obviously it's not about the budget and all the reasons they say, but they had to change course. And so then after the shuttles were decommissioned, then we had to rely on Russia. Maybe it was just because they had to go from the Cold War narrative to the space program to competing programs to then, I guess now we're forced to cooperate, even though that never really made sense. The whole Cold War thing's its own rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's
anyway.
It's kind of
it's
like
crazy because they're just like it's the same thing where they spent all this crazy tons of money building these Russian space shuttles, and then they didn't even really have an explanation. It's like suddenly then they just mothballed the project and like, okay, well, never mind. And then they just went back to rockets.
Yep.
And that's what so it's just like, wait a minute. There's so many weird things like that. And then the satellites thing is crazy. Because honestly, I was really, I was kind of skeptical of the whole balloon thing for a long time. I thought like maybe that was just a little too
convenient.
People were kind of just. Yeah, like people just wanted, because everyone wants to figure everything out. maybe that was just, I don't know. I wasn't super convinced, but yeah, the more like without Skiba interview with the guy that they just did the launch with,
Yeah, that guy Victor.
With Victor, and he's like, I've I have no reason to believe that he's just relaying what he heard on the phone, and it's like, this is weird.
Yeah, and he said it multiple times. I've heard him say that very same story multiple times. So it's like, well, maybe there's.
And I've for a long time I've kind of been in this place where, because that's one of the things a lot of people bring up is like, well, I know so and so who works at a company and they built satellites for 30 years, all this, and I have no, I've been very open to the idea that they're definitely building something that they think that they're putting into space, and may very well be going up into the sky. But are they even using the rockets to do that? Are they using balloons? Are they, is there something to do with the electromagnetic, uh, nature of the firmament and whatever? You know what I mean? Who knows?
Yeah.
Or maybe they do orbit up there. I don't know.
But
it's weird because they are, obviously they're doing something, but it's weird that it's all part of the technology grid. It's all part of the system that they've been trying to build. That space again is just sort of this narrative that people believe, so that, because how much creepier would that be if it's just like, no, we're putting up balloons, we're putting up all these, I don't know. That's kind of
yeah, no, and that's kind of how I guess I came across doing that video, because it was the same thing. When you first get in, and there's not a whole wealth of information about, this whole flat earth thing. It's just everybody's just trying to, it almost became a race to who can come up with the next thing. Right. But, so there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of bad information. So you kind of takes a while to really, because at first I was like, oh no, there's no way they can exist, right? And then you kind of start hearing rumors about the balloon project, and then you realize that that's been going on since like the 40s or 50s. So when you say that, like, hear,
why would they need that many balloons?
Exactly.
And
it makes it makes sense too that they that's why there's so many dead spots. You know what I mean? Because they can't, obviously they're not going to sit there and put 50,000 balloons in an area where nobody's traveling to. Why that's why that whole area in the like Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, whatever, there's just no coverage, because there's no point of having them there. And then when you see the original video, because I had to re-upload this like 5 times because I kept getting hit with copyright infringement. There is a scene in one of the Batman movies where that you see he goes like to China or something, gets this guy, and then takes like this balloon, and it just So I had that clip in there, and they just like, no, you can't use that. Same thing with like in the beginning of the video, you see it was a movie XXX, and the opening scene, you see all these satellites orbiting the Earth in different directions, just moving. And it's like, that's what we're supposed to see, but that's not what we see, because it's not reality. You know what I mean? So,
well, and that's the kind of thing where I get how some people will probably say, well, if you really were like way out in space looking at the globe, you could see the whole wall, right? A single satellite itself is the size of, what a car or a truck at the most. Most of them are even smaller than that. So, okay, so theoretically, maybe you wouldn't see them in the photos from far away. But you can't tell me that like after this many decades that they were not, even by accident, from the ISS, dude. It's like taking pictures 24/7. It's gonna get close enough to capture a satellite, even if it's just a blur or well, see, that's the whole thing, is that supposedly we can see them with our, even with the naked eye, because they're reflecting sunlight and whatever in the sky. But So yeah, you would see at least the reflection. It'd be like it looked like a bunch of little stars around the planet,
Yeah.
right? They're supposed to be reflecting, even if it was just where it was near enough to where the terminus between the day side and the night. I never understood that. Like how it could be like the middle of the night and I can see a satellite because it's like we're in the shadow side of the Earth. Like there should be no sunlight for it to be reflecting off of there. So
yeah, and
there's just so many things.
Exactly.
Like the whole eclipse thing now that people are taking apart. And like you said, there's just so much things to kind of weed through, like good info and bad info, and some stuff that's just like, well, it's just you kind of put it on the back burner and something to think about. But like with the satellites thing or the bloom thing, we can't say 100%, but to me, I'm a lot. I certainly don't think it's as silly of an idea as I used to, right? Because the more you get the little bits of information in, you're like, oh, well, maybe there is something to this, and you just have to kind of be willing to be continually open and taking things as they come and be patient with it. But like you said, it's so easy for some people to get caught up in like, oh, we got to figure out the map, we got to figure out,
Yep.
In some ways, it's just like there are so many people that's just they're completely absorbed in just that, like just figuring out whatever, figuring out the sun, figuring out where the continents are, figuring out I won't name names, but they're that's like what so many people are just talking about nonstop, and it's like again, whether you figure out exactly what the map is, in some ways that wouldn't even really impact your life in a immediate way, one way or the other, as much as like, well, again, well, why are they covering this up? Why are we here? Who created all this? Like those questions are still there. It's like you're just distracting yourself with. That's what's crazy too, is that there's more and more people now. This is what's weird, is that there's a lot of elements within the flat Earth research kind of, family or whatever. The topics that actually do lend themselves to once again getting kind of sucked into esoteric, uh, new age concepts, such as cymatics, which is interesting, and it's obviously a real, or all the Tesla stuff, and I think a lot of that has to just do because you're trying to figure out the whole. This is interesting. The whole thing is like there's this weird interplay between the physical Earth that we live on that we can stop and we can measure. You can measure a straight line, right? That's a pretty simple geometric concept to verify or disprove, right?
Yep.
Like if it's flat, and we should be able to measure it or debunk that. That's pretty straightforward, and we can all get together and agree on that question, at least the flat earthers can. But then it's like, well, how is it all laid out, and where's the continents, and what's up with all these distances and all these objections, and then you're trying to kind of reconcile issues with the ground with issues in the sky, and that's where it gets, I think, it's sort of, I wouldn't say a trap, but can be kind of turned into sort of a I don't know that we're necessarily. I mean, when you look at the Bible, it talks about it's God's handiwork, and it's declaring, the glory of God, and we have, of course, all the different associations with the angels and the stars, but it's never. I don't find anything that really suggests that, like, oh, we're gonna be able to figure out, break down and understand the heavens the way that we can, map out a land mass or map out the oceans or, build a city. And that's the thing is that you're talking about the spiritual realm in a sense, right? And if angels are somehow connected to the actual stars that you see at night, you're seeing sort of a glimpse of spiritual realities that are connected to the physical, right? So it's all about this connection between the physical and the spiritual, which I think weirds a lot of people out, a lot of Christians too, because we've all accepted this idea that the stars are just, physical, just like if I lit a fire in my backyard. It's, you know, light, but it's being emitted by chemical processes and photons, and it's all matter and energy, right?
Yeah.
And so once you get into the flat Earth, suddenly you're questioning relativity, you're questioning, you're questioning gravity, you're questioning everything. Like the sun, is the sun really this 93 billion miles away? Uh, this massive fusion reaction. You know, that's what they say, is that it's atoms that are fusing together into making, you know, denser or heavier and heavier elements, and then that the heat from that fusion is what we feel when you walk outside. You know, and suddenly you're going, I don't think so. And I don't think those stars are just other examples of the same, you know, fusion process, even farther away.
Yeah.
And so now you're just like, so what is it? What's going on? And, you know, those are natural questions to ask. But then, because we've all, you know, our tendency is to want to know, like, well, how does it work? And then you're getting in all the electromagnetics and, you know, people that get into stuff like Ken Wheeler and Eric Dollard and all the, you know, and it's interesting stuff. But I do see how this is what's so interesting is like when you really research how the Copernican model came about and how so much of what we call science, you know, in the Renaissance and all of that was influenced so heavily by, again, going back to occultism. It was heavily influenced by Kabbalah and Hermeticism and alchemy and all these sort of various strains of witchcraft, basically, that kind of started trickling down through into Europe, and they were kind of mixing and melding it with Christian ideas, quote unquote, but they were getting less and less Christian over the centuries because they kept, you know, mixing it with Greek philosophy and all these different, you know, non-Christian sources. And so it's amazing when you really trace the whole progression of like how, like one little idea here and one little teaching there, and it gets repackaged and it starts to gain acceptance, and then it just becomes the norm. And then they're like little building blocks, right?
Yeah.
And they're just one at a time, like over generations and generations. And then so now it's like, you know, we just go, the majority just goes, oh, well, it's science. You know, we just discovered all this just with our own human ingenuity and curiosity and testing and experimentation. It's like, no. And when you really dig into it, you realize that a lot of it was just come up with these concepts, and they built mathematical models to try and explain the observations. But a lot of the testing side, they skipped over. You know, the verification is supposed to be like the most crucial part of science. That's the part that's getting skipped a lot of, like, or, you know, it's just getting fudged. You know, when you look at when they were trying to measure stellar parallax for like 200 years before they supposedly succeeded, you know. So there was the assumption that these stars were millions and millions of miles away and moving, but just so, you know, it's just so big that you can't even measure it, even just in so. And then when they finally measured it, it was just, you know, this tiny infinitesimal amount, and then you're like, oh, yeah, there you go. You know what I mean? It's like the fudge factor in there. It's just again and again, it's like seeing what you want to see, right? People that want to see, they want to look at that photoshopped globe and believe that it's a real photo. They're going to believe it because there's so many factors involved in you know, it's all part of a paradigm. It's amazing how just one thing, it's not a simple issue at all, because it bleeds into everything.
That's one of the
I don't even remember where we started with this, but yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why I think it's being, you know, God has revealed it to us, to everyone, because it does start putting things in, you know, it's like the puzzle piece that actually starts filling the rest of the actual puzzle. You know, the one that actually starts,
like, you can go two ways with it. You can go, you can go deeper into, because there's like the mainstream science, which is all about, oh, we can, we believe that this huge, vast Big Bang universe, and we can study everything and nail down all the laws of physics and put it into an equation. And basically, it's we can be like God. It's all about, it's not this, science. I believe in science. Science just means knowledge. So it's like, it's a part of this whole evolutionary worldview where you believe that we're eventually going to just, solve all the mysteries of the universe and know everything there is to know, right? So that can occur in the Copernican paradigm, but even when people step out of that and they reject the Big Bang universe and they think that they are in some kind of enclosed world, you can still kind of proceed with that same mentality and kind of make man the measure of all things and refuse to acknowledge the creator. Or for so many other people, it's like suddenly it's like, and some people, what's amazing, Carlos, is like some people, they come into this and it's like they have no exposure to, the New World Order or any of that, right?
Yeah.
And this is like this is like the first thing that they come across and they're like, wow, they see the evidence and they reject the programming and they look at their Bible or whatever and they're like, dude, and then now it just, you see how like all the stuff that we've been taught, it's not just space. It's like, Einstein and Newton and all these, I mean, do you just walk around and notice like how much it's just the same handful of names, the same handful of things, it's just programming like all the time.
Yeah, that's all
and
it is.
The same heroes, and all of a sudden it's just like, it's all, you see how it all fits, like the evolution side, the the technology, and then I think a lot of people, like a lot of us, are just going like, yeah, wow, it's like God is God, we are not. It's all about human pride. This whole idea that like we're so smart and we're so advanced and so so evolved in our thinking. It's just all the same Luciferian light, and it just becomes like so simple, like how all of the deception just is fueled by pride, and you're just like, it's weird because I do see it as a gift, but also, just like anything else that's true, the enemy can use it to deceive people who are unwilling to acknowledge that, okay, the Bible's really true and there really is God. What's this Jesus guy all about? And, okay, and there's some people that they just, they've emailed me and commented and come to me and they were just like, yeah, man, I was falling away from God, I rejected God, or I was an atheist, or I was in a cult, and flat Earth, man. If they're looking into this flat Earth stuff, and there's like thousands of people out there that are like finding God and finding Jesus because of flat Earth, and you can't just be, you can't deny it. That like that's, I've never seen anything else do that. I've never seen 9/11 or the Nephilim topic, anything, have that effect on people, even though there's truth going on there. So it's amazing how it's like, on the one hand, it can be very frustrating and annoying with all the noise and all the debates, but at the same time, there's also the fruit and the people that are waking up and and it's like, and it's amazing too, dude, because not only do the people that I think, when they come at it with that point of repentance and acknowledging God, and they don't even maybe know nothing about the Bible, but it's like really early on, they like, you don't have to explain, like those other people that have been maybe Christians their whole lives but still believe all this propaganda about America being a Christian nation, or believing what they watch on the news and believing in and trying to convince them that, like, no, dude, we're living in the last days. This is real. It's really happening. Like, Revelation is coming to pass, like, right now. the people that are coming to God through this crazy flat Earth stuff, you know, they're already there. Like you don't have to explain that to them. They they see it instantly, and so that's just amazing to me. How because I think any of us who've been into this for very long, you know how difficult it is to try and wake people up who just don't want to see it. They don't want to believe that there's all these people that are they're really doing these horrific things in secret involving rituals and children and sacrifices and it's Satanism. It's real,
Yeah.
and there really is crazy human trafficking networks going on. And, they own the media, and it's insane. So in some ways, the idea of lying about the Earth and faking a few moon missions and battle, that's kind of that's that's not the worst of what they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard to wake people up to that. But then, it still amazes me how, there's no formula for it. I don't think it really goes back down to the whole kind of mystery of like the, the whole process of repentance and salvation and, God pursuing us. But yeah, I'm kind of rambling. So
no. But this is what I like. I like to learn this stuff because it's a lot of the stuff that you say. I definitely feel, and I just want to say thank you for putting up those videos of the testimonies because my wife is not she thinks that I'm crazy. She's a believer, but she doesn't test things, and she it might as well be if it didn't come from the news, she's not listening to me. But at the same time, she's kind of supportive in some ways. So there's times when I throw on one of those testimony videos, and just let it play. And I know she's absorbing it. So I got to say thank you for putting those up because I know eventually that's going to be a big part of my wife, hopefully waking up to something like this. Because you never know what's going to help someone.
Yeah, those are. I need to do another one probably, but yeah. So that's just what started amazing me, like how people just, even in the midst of, there's no churches out there that are promoting this. There's no other ministry. It's like it's the total opposite. It's like everyone out there who's supposedly already saying this is a lie, this is a deception, this is ridiculous, this is just trying to make the Bible look bad, and just trying to squash it like in every way possible or ignore it. But, people that aren't ignoring it are trying to squash it. Well, the main Christian consensus is like, no way. And yet all these people are coming to the Bible and coming to believe it. It's like that doesn't make any sense. From like an evangelistic standpoint, you're trying to squash something that is still, even though you're condemning it, is bringing people to faith in God.
Yep.
So what's up with that? You can't like, okay, so even if it was even if it was just, these people were just really confused and believing something that wasn't true, this is what, even as sort of a philosophical exercise, there's a weird kind of just thought experiment. It's like, so, this is what I ask people sometimes. It's like, do you think that God, like when they die, they came to faith through this, quote unquote silly thing. They were confused and deceived and all that. But they came to believe that there really was a God and that he really loved them and that the Bible was true and that Jesus was a real man who died for their sins. Do you think God is then going to like say, no, sorry, you can't come into my kingdom because, you thought they were flat, like morons. You know what I mean? It's like, I've yet to come across somebody who's going to actually tell me that God would, reject somebody's saving faith based on cosmology. But then they would say, like, well, then what does it, and it's like, well, what does it matter? And it's just amazing because it's like nobody makes those kinds of arguments against, creation ministry about the whole evolution versus creation. that like, well, if you reject evolution and you reject Darwinism, that you know you're automatically saved. No, it's not like just believing that there was a creator versus no creator is itself, the pinnacle question. Faith is really it's about Christ, but all these things they're connected and they relate. So it's an important topic, no matter how you slice it. And so, yeah, the testimony thing is amazing because it's just, yeah, it just ties into like everything we were just talking about, where you know we live we live in the times that we do. We don't just believe in God in a vacuum. We live in historical context, a political context, a cultural context, and this is the context that we live in, where free, satanic Freemasons are telling us that we're going to the moon and going to Mars, going to go to Mars, or maybe not, or they keep changing their mind. But all this stuff, and it's like, you know, we live in a time of deception. We live in a time of, the enemy is in control of the world around us, and that's a hard thing for a lot of people to come to grips with. And I totally feel you when it comes to like family and friends, and they're just like that's crazy. But I think what's most important in that sort of being in that difficult position is, on the one hand, you know that they think a lot. I'm right there with you, dude. They think a lot of the stuff that you're saying is a little out there, a little, a crazy conspiracy theory, a little tinfoil hat. But if they see, this is what's so cool, dude, about the flat Earth, I think, is that unlike a lot of other stuff, you're not just fixating on, what they're doing in deep underground military bases and, where they're hiding the UFOs or what they're doing at Bohemian Grove. But it's like, it does put the focus back on the creation and creator and the natural world. And, there's a lot of just beautiful, joy in it because it's like, oh yeah, like this place is amazing. It's not because, the Copernican universe is all about like, oh, Earth is just a tiny, speck of dust in the middle of this unfathomably huge empty space full of radiation and death and comets. And, whereas like now you're just like, dude, the Earth is beautiful.
Yeah,
it's like
true.
it's like a house that God made. It's got a roof. It's got a floor. It's got mountains and oceans. And it's like, oh, awesome, God, you're good. And you kind of are looking at, it's like all the stuff that supposedly that they're doing with their space station. It's all just so much of it is just smoke and mirrors. And so I think if your friends and family can see that, like, okay, yeah, you believe the stuff that they think is wacky, but if they see that, like, at the end of the day, you love God, you love His Word, you aren't chasing after the things that the world tells us to chase after, which is, money and sex and power and, all the distractions and all the idols and all, I think over time, you're also that testimony to people to where it's like, well, so if you believe all this crazy, because that's the thing, it's like if supposedly we're believing things that are ultimately from Satan, if this is a satanic deception or some sort of occult, if we got duped, then eventually that deception will have the fruit of the enemy in our lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but if it's drawing you closer to God and it's drawing you back to where you're like, man, I love my family and my wife, and I just love the simple things that God made in life, and and your priorities are right, and you're not getting sucked into all the garbage. What are they going to say? The fruit speaks for itself, right? And that's what the Bible says is that, like, the more by our fruit. So sometimes this is what I'm still learning too, is to like not try and just you can't just debate people into places that they're not ready to be. But and that's the same thing when you're talking to other people who maybe are open to the flat Earth and they're into that, but they're still not sure about the Bible thing, and they so it's like there's people that are in the opposite it's like the reverse of what like your wife and stuff like that, right? Where okay, they believe in flat Earth, but they don't believe in God. They don't believe in the Bible. And if you had to pick one of those two, which would it be?
Oh, definitely.
If you had to,
You definitely want them to believe in
so
the Creator.
yeah, because at the same time, God's not going to like deny people because they believed in this globe, but they still put their faith in Jesus. God, I don't see God. God's not looking for excuses to you know to reject us on technicalities and things like that. But at the same time, these things all do domino. They all do influence. There's a reason that Satan has been working for hundreds of years to introduce evolution into society, and because it has had destructive effects on millions of people.
Yep.
So you have to. It's a difficult position to be kind of like understanding all these sides at the same time. Where it's like you're not letting things get out of priority, but you're also not um, being ashamed of what you've seen and what the research has shown. And then like you open up the Bible and it's like, dude, there's no solar system in there. There's no, this just doesn't line up. And and once you kind of, so we have to pray for wisdom and patience, just because there's so many different things coming at us trying to kind of knock us off course. And there are some people that make the flat Earth just like the end all be all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's probably just as unhealthy as the people that refuse to listen to it and refuse to give it give it a fair shake. So we can't fall into either one of those pitfalls, right? But just to speak the truth and love, and all how it's just the Bible speak about love. I keep thinking about that verse where it's like, I could fathom all mysteries and know all things, but if I have not love, I'm nothing. So it's like you could know all the stuff that the angels know. You could know how heaven and earth work and know what's under the earth and understand, all these things that we kind of wonder about. But if at the end of the day, you don't love your brother, you don't love your fellow man in the way that Christ demonstrated for us, then it's all
for nothing. Yep.
So, man, it's something that I'm constantly being kind of conflicted about too.
Well, because, it's like powerful stuff. It's really, and it's important stuff. And like you said, a lot of it is on how our lives are being led by this movement. And I'll be honest, I know in the beginning, part of it was like, yes, I have my faith in Jesus Christ, but man, the flat Earth, and then that's one of the things why I really liked about your channel is that every time I would watch a video, it would get me convicted to realize like, no, you know what, flat Earth is super important. I mean, it's really important, especially in this day and age. But the ultimate truth is, do you have a relationship with his son? If you don't, then what does it matter if the earth is flat or not, And it's important, the earth being flat, because it has revealed so many of these dark mystery schools and so many of these, just, like we kept saying before, it throws, you can throw away a lot of stuff to realize that it's impossible. And they were just, you start seeing like, oh, I definitely know that this guy's been lying for this whole time because this is impossible, in this model, you know what I mean? I think that's another reason why there are others who are convicted in this movement, and they choose to not think about the quote unquote dome, because if you are in an enclosed creation, then there's a little bit more accountability to it. So they naturally want to fight it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why
they gotta come up with something else.
Yep. So I think that's why you see this infighting. Yep. Yeah. So
it's like I mean, and in some ways it's like that. It's not that shocking when we think about like there was Israelites in like Exodus and stuff, where they saw they saw God do the plagues on Egypt. They saw water come from the rock. They saw the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, and they saw all these crazy miracles, and then still were like, no, I want to worship the golden calf, or no, I want to follow Korah and his rebellion against Moses, or I want to go back to Egypt. It's like, so it's like, you see how like proof of God is only so much of the equation, right? It's like you can have proof upon proof upon proof and still in your heart not surrender, right? Because it does come down to like, yeah, it's an authority thing. Like if God's really up there above, like that's oppressive. That's that's I don't like that. It's tyrannical or whatever. And so, it really comes down to like whether you're willing to surrender to to a creator, or you want to be in control of your own life. You still want to be accountable to yourself and no one else. And that's really the main deciding factor. But what you just said reminded me of that video you made. We were talking about all the mystery school stuff, all the occult stuff. Like, it's crazy how it's so true how like, yeah, once you kind of understand what all that stuff is, and it's like, yeah, when you go to like Disney World, like your Disney World trip, and you're like, man, I'm just trying to have a nice day with the family and have a good time. But it's like, man, you can't help it when they're sticking all this occult symbolism and all this stuff in your face, like everywhere you turn. And that's just kind of how it is. That's like, it's such a perfect kind of like analogy for just sort of life in general. We live in this weird Disneyland world.
Yeah.
And it's like you turn on the TV and you go to the store and you're, everything is just like all these cartoonified representations of stuff that's really like serious and dark, but it's like, oh, it's it's just for fun, it's just entertainment, it's just whatever, just chill out. And it's like, yeah, it's hard to be like, dude, it's weird too, because out the flat earth, because it's like, I remember going to Disneyland and thinking that about certain things after I kind of understood like what Disney's all about. But it's still, you still didn't think of like Tomorrowland as a
right.
It's just another
Space Mountain.
Like, yes, all the space stuff. But did you ever see the Disney movie called Tomorrowland?
Yeah, the one with
that was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you had an extra dimensional secret society trying to save humanity and take us to like the next. It was like they're actually glorifying a secret society, with like kids and young people, and you go to some other dimension where there's like this, Tomorrowland city. It was just like the symbolism in that was just like I couldn't even I would never have been able to think it up, And it's like you put this in a movie and put it out there.
Yep, and the crazy thing, is with that. Yeah,
the whole term Tomorrowland just took on a whole. It's like, do you know how much like Luciferian teaching is just embodied in that one word, in that one Tomorrowland? That's a whole concept. That's a whole. That's a whole teaching summed up in this thing that we don't, we don't even think about it because it's just like, oh, it's space and it's like, no, this is a very, it's all. The whole technocracy idea. It's like in, Disney. Walt Disney he was obsessed with that idea since the beginning. That's what the whole Epcot Center thing was, with the geode. And it's weird too that it was a ball, and it kind of, oh man, it just keeps going on and on. Because it even connects to like Buckminster. Are you familiar with Buckminster Fuller?
Maybe I came across the stuff, but I'm not sure. But just by the name,
yeah. It's weird how the same. He's the guy. He was like in the '60s. He was this kind of weird mathematician slash philosopher slash kind of quasi New Age, but I don't think a lot of people recognize him as that because he built geodesic domes, right? And he kind of was the big advocate of geodesic domes as like this new direction to kind of go with architecture. So he was like an architect, but also like a I don't know. He's just kind of a unique thinker guy. But he's put up on a pedestal by the mainstream, by the system. He's like this genius guy, so you know that obviously there's something wrong with what he's doing. And he was, but the whole. I don't know if he collaborated directly with Disney for Epcot or if it was just inspired by him, but there's a connection there. But also when you get into the whole idea, the whole questions of like how did they do the math? Because geodesy, the geodetic surveyors, is like how supposedly we know that the Earth is a globe.
Yeah.
So geodetics is like this whole field that ties back into stuff. It's weird how there's all these connections because it also ties into weird occult stuff. Like people, like if you go to like Burning Man, or if you go to different festivals and things like that, a lot of times they set up these domed tents or domed structures that they do meditations in. So it's like for whatever reason they're really into the domes in terms of um, mystical, spiritual practices, and basically you're contacting the spiritual realm when you're meditating. So for whatever reason, dome structures are important to them, just like pyramids.
Yeah.
So it's weird, but anyway, that was a crazy tangent. But yeah, Disneyland, crazy.
Yeah, no, that is it is. Yeah.
I really got a kick out of like that video because you're just like, here it is again. Yeah, now we got Harry Potter world, and it's like,
oh my Lord, that thing is just filled to that. Like there was footage that I mean. I got to a point where my wife was like, all right, listen, bro, are we here on vacation? Or are you here to find out like what Freemasonry is being thrown in our face? So I had to put the camera, but man, if anyone goes there, they're going to be shocked. There's just so much stuff.
Yeah. And don't you think that's just bizarre how like, okay, we supposedly live in this world where it's all about science and it's all about technology, and we're so, everything that we have is because of science. And it's like, why is the Bible is stupid and ridiculous, and, the beliefs of these ignorant goat herders, blah, blah, blah. But then at the same time, all of these, Disney that on the one hand has been like pioneer, one of the main propagandists for space travel, technology, and all the stuff of the future, but they've been pushing magic the whole time, and all about wizards, and it's just ridiculous. It's like, why? It's so bizarre how. I mean, if you go into like a bookstore or a library, you go into like Barnes and Nobles, and you just look at like, it's all witchcraft, and it's just, I mean, everybody knows it, but it's like, why? Yeah, even in the superhero movies and everything, it's like you've got technology and you've got witchcraft, like being used simultaneously side by side. It's like these are not contradictory things. And like Star Wars. I mean, it's like Star Wars is bigger than ever. And it's just again and again, it's the same thing. And it's like this is what I just keep wanting to teach people or point out to people. It's like, dude, if you understand that, okay, there's the New World Order is real and they're in control, and they're obviously into the occult. This whole, because so many people, dude, they get sucked into this idea that like, well, they're using this secret knowledge for evil, but they just don't want us to know about it because then we could use it to like change the world for good and to free ourselves and blah blah blah. And it's like, really, is that something you can honestly uh, argue the propaganda? Like my whole life, I was born the year that the first Star Wars movie came out, 77. And, so my whole life watching He-Man and Transformers, it's like, it's all been about
pushing
they've been
space.
pushing the occultism and the mystery schools and the magic, and they've been glamorizing it like nonstop my whole life. And you're trying to tell me that like no, really, they want you to believe in the Bible because the Bible is what's going to keep you captive and keep you ignorant. It's like there's no logic to that argument. Like all you do is just like, and that's why some people get they get confused by like, well, why do you keep pointing to entertainment and movies and stuff? Like you just think you get all your ideas about things from movies. And it's like no, look at the propaganda. Look at what they're constantly reinforcing.
Yep.
And it's not the Bible. It's the stuff that you think is so. And when you go back into Theosophy and Blavatsky with the secret doctrine and all that, it's like it was all spelled out, right? Over 100 years ago, it was saying like we are going to promote the occult and we're going to attack and eliminate Christianity. Like the plan has been laid out. Like it's not a big secret. These are the people that were with Lucifer's Trust and all that. They created the UN, and it's like these connections are like documented. They've been out there for years. I was learning about this stuff, years ago when I was first learning about the New World Order. It's like people have put together all this research like again and again, and it's there if you're willing to see it. If you're willing to see these, no, this is all satanic. This is all, this is what they want to promote. And then again, that was what was so trippy when I started getting into Flat Earth, and it was like things like 2001 Space Odyssey, which, Bill Cooper had kind of done this big whole expose on before he died. But like looking at it through this sort of new perspective of like space just being like this kind of fictional setting through which you're teaching the same spiritual Luciferian things. It's like it's the same thing. Like they've been putting this into the mainstream, putting this into entertainment, putting this into pop culture, so that we get and it was when you compare now to even 10, 20 years ago, it's like it's ridiculous. And you just watch children's cartoons now, and they're like so full of occult symbolism and ideas that it's off the charts. But yeah, I mean, we're living in crazy. So on the one hand, it's like you don't want to get to where all you do is talk about it, but at the same time, I go back and forth with this all the time, dude, because so many Christians are just oblivious. That like what they're watching and what they're being,
fed, yeah,
and thoughts are being filled with. It's like this is straight out of the occult, dude. This is straight out of satanic witchcraft, and we think it's just some creative show or some, it seems innocent enough or whatever. And it's like, so you have to keep pointing out like where this comes from and hoping that people will like, will stop and kind of realize like, it's everywhere. It's really, it's just being broadcast on all channels, on all frequencies, at all times of day. And, if anything, it's just basically anything but the God of the Bible. Any kind of spirituality, any kind of scientific, sci-fi, whatever kind of worldview you want, but except for Jesus.
That's right. Yep. And that's how that's how it's been pushed, even in our community, where it's like, we want to talk about all this, but we don't want to mention anything about the God of the Bible because it will turn people away. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how do you say that in one aspect and then have a guy who dedicates full videos showing how this has changed them and brought them into a relationship with God? Like, you know what I mean? That's why it's like, no, you're just saying that because you choose not to, I'm
trying to figure out who you're referring to specifically.
There's a lot of them. A lot of them speak like that, especially just in general. Like you just have a lot of especially if they have a chance to get on any kind of hangout, that's like, it's just like
Huh.
one things they like to talk about, and it's sad because
Yeah.
in one hand they say this, and then on the other hand there's like, oh, well, we need to be a community. Well, how can you be a community if the next thing that comes out of your mouth is how you want to bash the scriptures or anyone who believes in the Bible? Because there's this tendency lately that if you're a quote unquote flat earther, but you believe in the Bible and you take the Bible literal, then it's almost like you're looked at less, like, oh, well, you only believe that because your Bible says so. And it's like, no, it just adds to it. It strengthens our belief because it shows more of its accuracy than what everybody's been saying, that how the Bible is stupid.
And that's the kind of thing that I think, in some ways it's not really new, because that was all these little, I hear them every day from people like, oh, you're still in the programming, and you were taught to believe, and you'll get there. And it's just like, no, dude, trust me, like I talk about this stuff all the time. I know what the New Age is all about. I know what people like more than I want to. But I'm still standing by my faith in Christ and the biblical account, and we can have a conversation about it. And so it's hard because this whole the whole idea of the flat Earth community is just kind of a weird. On the one hand, it's like it is a community. I mean, I'll still sit and I can listen to like Glowbusters and stuff like that, and they'll have a lot of good conversations about various things, and there's good info that can come about, or whoever else, Mark Sargent and all these guys. There's people that even if I think spiritually that doesn't mean that everything they say has no value.
Yeah.
There's still some very bright people, but it's difficult because you're in this place of like, at the end of the day, if you're going to be like, oh, we have to come together on this flat Earth, and that trumps what you believe about the Bible, and it's like, sorry, dude, that's I can't go along with that. So if you can't hang with that, then that's your choice. But I'm not gonna
change who we are, because
I'm not gonna deny like what I know to be true through my whole testimony, through all the research I've done, through just look at the world around you, and so that's kind of what I've been. It's been good too to kind of be in this process, and the last couple of years, and looking into this, and then finding thing. And I think it is for a lot of people where these are the conversations that we're going to have to be learning to have with people anyways, like even outside of the flat Earth quote unquote community, because this is the spirituality that is this is the mindset that is just taking over everything, whether you're globe or flat or whatever. These are the kinds of attacks that you're going to get from all sides. You're going to get it even in churches where they're just like, hey, we're trying. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like this is what the Bible tells us is going to be. The last day's deception is going to be all about is a turning away from the simple truths of the gospel, and trying to conform to the world, and conform to the morality, conform to the spiritualism, and oh man, it's already been going on for a while, but in some ways it's kind of a crucible, I guess you could say, the whole cosmology thing. Because you're on the one hand, it's like you're butting heads with people that are like, all the creation ministries and all these guys that are coming out against, you're just a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists. And stuff. Well, pick up your Bible. Like the Bible is a conspiracy book. I hate to tell you that, but 3 chapters in, and there's this serpent guy who shows up, and he's deceiving people, and he's all the way through to the end of the book. To the very end, he's defeated.
Yeah.
So it's like there's an enemy. What is going? The whole story. You can't. If you take Satan out of the picture, the whole Bible falls apart. It's either true or it's not. It's either true in its entirety or it's not, and either you believe it or you don't.
Yep.
And so you're having that debate on the sort of materialistic, worldly Christians on one side, and then the worldly, mystics and New Agers and other folks on the other side. I feel like we got to be able to like have those conversations and engage and still fight for the gospel and point to the gospel and you know and be able to do it lovingly and all that. But so it's a good training ground, because like you said, it's on the one hand the whole cosmology issue is amazing and it's exciting and it's interesting, but at the end of the day, our relationship with God is like bigger than all of that because we won't be having those debates when in eternity. You know, we
Yeah,
won't have
exactly.
to sit and figure out what the Earth looks like. I mean, it's like we're going to see stuff that we didn't even think of to wonder about. You know, um, so we don't need to sweat all the details now, but we do. What does matter is like whether people come to know who God is. And there's so many lies out there in the world that Satan has been planting and cultivating for thousands of years, attacking the Bible, attacking the person of Christ, attacking the gospel, attacking everything that is good and true. He just wants to pervert and destroy and wipe away. And that's like all he's trying to do. That's his number one thing. And God is preserving it. God is preserving his true church. He's preserving the gospel. He's preserving his word. And it's a crazy time for us to be alive. It's crazy to be like there's so many, so many crazy things you can just get engaged in. But you know, if it, thankfully for the grace of God, we can kind of maintain our sanity and maintain our walk with Him. And that's why it's so cool to like, without the flat Earth, like you and I wouldn't be talking right now. We probably would have never connected.
Exactly.
But it's pretty cool how there's that side too, where there's like a crazy fellowship that found with so many people that are just they see the same things, they get the same connections, and it's like some days I'm just like, oh, I'm just banging my head against the wall, and I'm so aggravated by things people are saying or thinking or whatever. But at the same time, sometimes I just read comments, dude, and they just make me cry. Like, like really, I'm not even worried. Like people say, just share stuff that like God has done, and I'm just like, it's overwhelming. So it's a trip.
No, it definitely is. Like, this is something that I've been thinking about lately, which is like and this ties into the whole satellite thing in the ISS. And maybe someone has said this before, I'm not sure, but just something I've been thinking about, which is like, I think that whatever's up there, because people say they see it, okay, and there might be videos of it, some of them just seem to be 100% faked. But I almost think that like, and this brings it back to the whole spirit realm, is that whatever we're seeing moving through the skies, you take your telescope or whatever, night vision goggles, like, I think they just decided to call it a satellite or call it the ISS, but those probably are beings of some sort. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, dude. And I know that's the kind of thing that to somebody who does, you have to be really far. You have to really get that. Yeah, the flat Earth is real, but also biblically, from the spiritual realm side, if you really fully understand like how interwoven, like the stuff that NASA and all these agencies are doing and how they're connected to the demonic side, you know, suddenly that doesn't sound crazy to me at all. And you could take that all the way back to, uh, 1957 with Sputnik and everything that's happened since then, and just go, dude, it, that would almost, in some ways, that would almost like be the sort of the simplest and easiest explanation. Uh, if angelic beings or spiritual beings, I don't think many people actually, because if you get into the whole UFO research thing and you understand that like there's orbs and objects and are they real craft or are they just entities, and you understand like how sort of how blurry the lines are, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That these are interdimensional things, or it's a light in the sky. That's about all you know. And it's like there's something spiritual going on. So if all the crazy UFO stuff can be basically attributed to spiritual demonic shenanigans, then just having a light in the sky that just constantly goes around and around in a prescribed, that's kind of, but everyone's, because they're in their brain, they're just like, oh, it's not unidentified, it's an identified flying object. It's the ISS. I've seen it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Simple, easy, boom. And it's like, to think that like people could be, it might not even be a hologram. It might not be a plane. It might not be anything technological. It might actually just be. And then you can take that. It's like how far could that go? And when you get into all again, it's like why the whole idea of divination and astrology and all this obsession with the skies and the stars and all these ancient monolith buildings and stuff that are all astronomically aligned. It goes way, way back, dude. So now if we have all these same influences and occult shenanigans going on with science and the Royal Society and the early astronomers and the first telescopes, and they're pointing it at the sky, and it's like they're thinking that they have this whole paradigm, this whole space paradigm that they're interpreting everything through. But how much of all of that is really, you've got radio telescopes, you've got, visual telescopes, you've got, you're talking about, it's just light, it's just EM waves, right? I mean, if Satan can masquerade as an angel of light, I mean, Satan's capable of creating light, or deceiving with light, with visual light, or with other presumably. I mean, anybody who gets into like the whole paranormal investigation stuff, right? That those guys, they walk around with like with all kinds of equipment, trying to look for like like the ghost hunter guys. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
They go around looking for like magnetic fields, and basically they're quote ghosts, but they're not ghosts, right? I mean, they're demonic entities.
That's right.
And so there's a whole host of different phenomena that are physical, mostly electromagnetic. There's temperature, there's even smells and things like that. They can move objects. That's the whole trick. So there's like things that the demonic realm does to deceive people, right?
Yeah.
Get them, and it's like the slow. They get seduced further and further into. How many people start out with ghost hunting and then end up eventually in straight up witchcraft? I mean, it's happened a lot, So it's like, how many people who are, they start out just as an amateur astronomy, and it's all fed by Star Trek, and it's just all these things feed off of each other, and then eventually we have this whole massive. It's all building up to something.
Yeah, man. Dude, it's definitely been a pleasure talking with you, getting to know you. I definitely gonna do this again, man. I really appreciate you taking the time for me, man, because I've been wanting to just hang out and talk to you and just get inside, your head and see how you think and everything else like that. Now I got the peanut gallery over here on my end hanging out. So,
all right, man.
Yeah,
I gotta go.
All right, man. Have a great day, man. God bless you, brother.
All right, we'll do it again. Bye.